Should have this going. Only 15 minutes late. God damn. It's annoying. Maybe.
So the YouTube one right now that just popped up is just named Multistreaming with RealStream.io or with Restream.io.
Should be Real Tuners Radio episode 151 take 2, but
no,
It says Real Tuners.
Nice. All right. Can you see the Real Tuners Radio logo on it?
Yep, and it says live now.
Okay, go ahead. We can do that then. If people catch that. Hey, how about that? Can you hear me? Right on. I see little lights blinking and stuff. Very good. Okay, excellent. Wow, sorry about that, everybody. Clark tripped over a USB cable and didn't realize it. That's what I'm going to blame it on. No, actually, I was screwing around and I totally unplugged something I shouldn't have, and it killed the audio. Looks like we're working. Can everybody hear us on Facebook? And can everybody hear us on YouTube?
YouTube's everything's working. I haven't even gotten the live again on Facebook.
It's going to be on a different live video, I think. I'm guessing. I don't know if it's working or not. So people get on my Facebook and tell people to come over to YouTube if they want to. Well, that fucking sucks. So, all right, cool. I can't even get to the point where I can see me. There we go.
It's just Facebook lagging because like your new live video isn't even on your wall yet.
Gotcha. I just wonder if it's going to be on the wall or if I got to restart stuff. So, all right. Sorry, Facebook people. You may be shorted out tonight, but we'll have this on YouTube. All right. Where do I begin? So I was blabbing for a couple of minutes before we figured out we had no audio. I see all the lights blinking over there now. So 2 parts to the show tonight that we wanted to get into. The first one, we wanted to talk with a buddy of ours and a customer, Ray Parsons. He built a car here recently that a buddy of ours, Brad Nagel, wired up. And I mean, shit, he probably spent 2 months down there getting this car wired up because it was super complex. It's think double frame rail, limited drag radial type of car is what guys are telling me is probably the most appropriate type of racing for this if they want to go and get competitive. But anyway, it's a beautiful car, and we took it out for the first time. I got to work. I think I had told you guys I got to work with Jim Parkinson, Tuned by JP up in Northwest Arkansas. He is here with us tonight, which is cool. Also, owner of the car and driver Ray Parsons is here. We figured we'd have them on and talk a little bit and just kind of bullshit about the process, how it went down and how things went. Play a couple videos for you. See what they have to say, what you guys have questions for them, and then we'll let them go, and we will move on to a tune review, right? Everybody liked doing the Fix My Tune thing last week, and we've got an interesting one this week for you to take a look at. So anyway, buckle up, chill out, and get ready to go. Let me know if anybody gets feedback on Facebook, if there even is a Facebook on Facebook.
There's nothing on your wall.
There's nothing on my wall. Okay, so let's tell people, if you're looking for the YouTube video, maybe share the YouTube video, people who are on here and listening. On Facebook, we could do that. Okay, cool. Well, welcome aboard, Ray Parsons. You first, man. What's tell us a little bit about the car, how long you've been working to get this one done, and give us some racing background. You've been competitive, your family for a long time. Tell us a little bit about the background in racing and then how you arrived at building this car.
Started out in, I think, 96 racing motorcycles. Kind of shouldn't have been at the track, but was. Raced local class street radial. Then 2000, life took over, and just kind of went from there. And then we did the 8.5 stuff from 14, 15, really, really heavy. Went anywhere we could go, all over. And then
was that 8.5 or Ultra Street, or what classes were those?
MW 8.5, and it was the MX 235 deal that Jordan put on.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
And then Mel had the class is real big when Mel had it as well. He had it at St. Louis and Las Vegas.
The streetcar supernats, right? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
So we did that, and then my son got a little bit bigger and seen we wasn't going to be able to go as much in the local classes. You need to run quite a bit faster. You need to be running 450s, and we was running 470s. So decided to get a different car. Then it was nitrous for about, I think, 2 or 3 races. Waited a year, changed it over to turbos. Went to Ducks race one time, qualified, I think, number 1 through 3 rounds. Went out first round, spun the tires. Went to one more limited drag radial race. We won that one in Memphis. Then basically just raced at Centerville ever since. Then what was it, in 19, what is the end of 19, we decided to swap motors. That deal turned out to take a lot longer than what we took.
Right. You were telling me about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we ended up, got the motor in, I think, June or July. It wouldn't fit in the car that we had issues. That was on a Friday night, wouldn't fit. Monday, put the car for sale, sold it Tuesday, and bought the car that we have now. And Friday night, we was trying to get it done last year. It didn't work out.
Yeah.
So
is that Power Easel car?
It is.
Okay, I thought so.
Yep, it's actually the second time I tried to buy it, and I tried to buy it once before to put my old motor in, and we couldn't. I was trying to trade in my old car, and it didn't work out. But yep, we ended up getting this, and then Brad wired it over the winter, and you was there. We took the Larry's and put it on the hub dyno the first time, and
yep,
got it somewhat going, got it going. Just had a few small issues. And
yep, just shaking the bugs out of it, right? We took it to Larry Heiss's hub dyno that he had down there, which was interesting.
Yep. So then we took it on a Sunday on a bracket day. We took it to Centerville again, and you and Jim as well come down, and we learned quite a bit. Still had some issues, and then fixed a lot of issues. And last week, I didn't even know if he was going to make it. And the guy that helps me, Travis, him and another friend of mine, we call him Twinkie,
Right.
He worked for me. So they took it to Jim's on the day that I had to be gone. And Jim and his guys, they went through it and fixed everything and took it last Friday, tested. I forgot to turn the boost launch on. We went a 589 at 130 first pass. Second pass, the 128 spun, got rained on, got soaked, loaded back in the trailer because we had oil leaks. Worked on it that night, went back the next day, and dude, man, last weekend was the most fun I've had in a long time.
Same here, man. Things just went good that night for the most part. I mean,
you don't have very often goes that good.
I started looking at the data logs after the fact. Those last couple of passes, we're driving through a whole bunch of expensive widgets in the trans. I think at some point, I don't know if you guys got it apart or not, but it didn't even look like it had a second gear by that last pass.
No, it didn't. Everything. It was sent off 2 days. What is this? Wednesday. It's sent off Monday. Yep.
Ugh. That part sucks. I mean, other than that, the car went pretty good. I mean, my observation, like he was saying, my part kind of started when Brad started powering things up in the car, and he's like, all right, this thing literally fills all 4 pages of the Holley inputs and most of those pages of the outputs on a Dominator. So it's pretty crazy. There's a lot of data going on this setup. They've got they got a VPS, they got a profiler, they've got what else? They got the CDI 600 box with the big MSD coils, just tons and tons of stuff going on in here. And so I had kind of helped Brad test stuff and bring it online one at a time. And then one thing led to another. I helped him put let's get this thing started base tune on it, and went back and we put it on the hub dyno a couple weeks later and kind of just shook it down just to see what it was going to do. Let's run this thing at 20 pounds of boost for a little while. And I mean, shit, can we talk? Do you care what horsepower?
No, I don't care. You know, whatever.
Yeah, I mean, was it like? Did I see a 2490 at one point on like 21 pounds or something stupid like that?
I don't even remember.
Yeah, I wasn't paying too much attention to the numbers because we were just trying to get the tune dialed in. But interestingly enough, my observation, it was a good experience on the hub dyno. It was the first time I had one of those that worked really good for us under load. But they still have such low inertia that it was really hard to get the tip in and off idle stuff figured out. The Jim Parkinson, who's on here, he actually ended up taking it back to his roller dyno, his inertia dyno. And, it's funny, the difference between my best effort on the hub dyno and what he was able to pull off, you'll see it in the video here in a minute. This thing, literally, it's got throttle response of a 15-to-1 naturally aspirated race motor. It gets on the chip immediately. So I thought that was pretty badass. But a lot of you guys know Tuned by JP Jim anyway. Might as well introduce him. Jim, welcome aboard. Can you hear us okay?
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
We hear you good, man. It's nice to have you. I know you're working tonight, so we don't want to take a bunch of your time. But could you tell us, like when you kind of stepped on board was kind of where we were, all right, I think this thing car's like 85% here. Tell us a little bit about when you entered the picture and the stuff you did to help get it to making passes, which is really what you did.
Okay, sure. The first thing we had to kind of line out was the boost controller wasn't working. And so the car came over once to my shop and we got the boost controller lined out and tested in the shop. Then we went to the track and I'd already kind of noted the location of the wastegates didn't look like they were effective. And once we got to the track, they weren't. We had boost creep issues. And then at the track, a few more problems kind of revealed themselves. The trans brake wasn't working. So we had to work through that stuff. Car had to go back to the fab shop and get the wastegates moved to a proper location. And then the drive shaft RPM wasn't working. So wound up, had to get the car back in my shop one more time and work through that and get the drive shaft signal with the PFEFI and then get the PFEFI getting repeater signal back to the Holley so we could get all that data.
What is the PFEFI? What the hell is that? I heard you use that term before. That's something with
it's just profiler for EFI. So
got it. Okay. PFEFI. Okay. PFEFI.
Yeah. So it's sick.
Perfect name, dude. Carry on.
That's what he named it. So
I was like, what the fuck is he talking about? The other night you were talking about that too. I can get the PFEFI set up. I'm like, are you making meth? What exactly is he talking about? But yeah. So carry on.
Whatever it takes.
Right. Right.
So, but like
we're going to talk about the profiler and your demonstrated skills on that here in a minute, but go ahead, keep going.
Okay. So once we got once we were sure we got everything working and tested here in the shop, then like you said, the tip end and the decel areas were a little rough. And I thought, well, we need to get the car on my dyno. I'll get that dialed in. And then not only that, but make sure the boost creep issues are gone, because on a car that makes that much horsepower, I can't have boost creep issues of even 1 pound. It just isn't manageable. So that's what we did. We got the car on dyno, dialed everything in the rest of the way, just in the idle and tip in areas and decel, and then tested on 9 pounds of boost on my roller dyno. The car and we've already talked to other bigger numbers, so it made 1367 at 9 pounds on my dyno. And I was really happy. I was like, okay, now we had a wastegate. On wastegate, the car made 867, and then on 9 pounds, it made 1367. I was like, cool. Now I got a little bit of data. I know kind of where the power is down at low boost. So I had some information to work off of once we got to the track.
Nice. And I mean, that was good, because then I showed up and met you guys at the track, and it was, I mean, car was ready to make its first hit. And if I remember right, so we had 2 qualifying tests, and did we blow the tires off the very first time, didn't we?
That was before
we did the very first.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, we had 2 test passes. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And of course, the track just absolutely wasn't there early on.
So one of the first observations I had of Jim was, now I'm the guy that says, all right, we blew the tires off. We're going to go back and we're going to, soften the hit, bring down the launch RPM, or we're going to, bring down the launch boost, whatever. We're going to kill torque at the hit a little bit. And it was, but I think it was after the second test run and before the first qualifier, and Jim's comment to me was like, I'm well, and we were letting Jim take over the launch, right? Because he was familiar with the track. He's familiar with chassis tuning, which everybody knows I am not. But his call was really interesting, where I would have gone back and pulled power back to get a good pass on the qualifier. Jim says, no, the track's going to come around. We're going to leave it where it's at. I'm like, okay, because it's his deal. If it, whatever, his responsibility. I was worried about, the 30 and 40 feet on. We used the dual VSS traction control stuff that we'll talk about later. But anyway, Jim made that call, and it was badass because the car hooked and went on the next pass because the track did come around. He's familiar with the facility. Yeah. He's familiar with race, just in general, radio prep. And I thought that was interesting.
On my best guess, I kind of pegged where we had the car set up at a 490 to 50. That's kind of where I really thought the car was set up, and it actually went a 489 the first time down, so I kind of hit that pretty close.
And I'll back him up that he did call that too. Yeah. So, in fact, the only time your calls started getting off was when the train started going away. The last probably 3 passes is my guess, where we're putting power in this and it's not picking up. Something's not right.
Exactly. I knew we had enough power in that thing to roll some really fast numbers, and I was like, it's just not happening. Something's going.
I mean, on the correct prep, that car could possibly crack into the 3s. I think that's all a pretty common deal. I mean, it's the engine combo is a Bischoff kind of typical. Well, walk us through the engine combo. Either one of you guys. Ray, you want to tell us what's under the hood?
Bischoff 540. It's got profiler heads, billet block. Of course, my old combo was a -2 heads, and it went 188 at 3,300 pounds. Bischoff he's bad. He can take anything and make it run, So This is a pretty solid deal. It should be a little bit, hopefully, we're hoping it's better than the last motor. So that's the reason we got it. So it should make, I don't know, 35. What do you think, Jim? 3,500, 4,000? 4,000?
At the flywheel.
Yeah, I agree.
I'd give it 3,800 at the flywheel, pretty reliably.
Yeah, somewhere in there.
That's what I would expect. I've tuned a few similar combos from Bischoff's. Like you said, didn't you guys bring down the compression a little bit in favor of longevity?
Yep. That's what he told me.
Yeah, and smart move. That's awesome. So I haven't looked at – there's a lot of stuff we hadn't looked at in the logs, but we got some killer in-car video. Sorry for the camera there. We got some really cool in-car video. Jason, go ahead and cue that up. In fact, go ahead and play it, bud. I don't know if he can hear me. I got to tell him to play it. He isn't listening. So here comes the video of our, what was this? This is the second round, right? Here it comes. the second round. You may notice that familiar blue Mustang in the right lane. We'll leave it at that. That was pretty cool. But you noticed when I put up the overlay data there, I noticed that the shift wasn't coming down at all in RPM. Basically, it was, so I think whatever we were doing, we were killing a converter or something in high gear was going away on us. But the car still ran a 50. What'd you run in the second round of eliminations? Like a 455 or 6? 53. Wow. Yeah, so car was absolutely moving for its first night out. I was kind of blown away. So to the specifics, I want to ask Jim a little bit more what he's willing to talk about anyway, about his technique. So me personally, I usually do my traction control differential style, or as everybody here is kind of familiar with, or I'll build in my own drive shaft curve, maybe on a Holley advanced table. I've not gotten hardly any experience with the Davis products. But Jim was over here, painting the fucking Mona Lisa with that thing. Honestly, I'll be quite honest. The first 20 feet that was all about, it looked like it was all about the Davis, the profiler. And, I watched that work, and I can watch in the data how it was working. And, this thing was printing tickets. When he wouldn't touch anything on the launch for 2 rounds, it'd run the same thing over and over. So it was, and he was creeping down in the low 120s into the high 110s for 60-foot time. And obviously the thing, better track, better prep, a little more chassis work, and a little more finesse on the tune. And I'm sure it's headed for the 110s, 60s. But Jim, can you tell us a little bit about how you approach setting up to get a profile, right? Did we have to get an A to B first, or how did that work exactly?
We needed an A to B first, and that's why I really liked your table that you showed me how to build the front wheel speed versus the drive shaft. That was nice because that got me a profile. Once I have a profile in the Davis, then I'm able to build off of that. And so once we get some more data on the Davis is an amazing traction control unit. There's nothing better on the market. Little plug there for Shannon, but I'm a dealer for him, so I got to do that.
That's okay. He's been on here twice. We love him, so he's a good dude.
Yeah. The Davis within 1 or 2 magnets of the 32 pulse per revolution, that thing knows it's going into wheel spin, and there's nothing quicker on the market that will fix going into wheel spin than the Davis. But the problem with the Davis is you have to have a profile first. You have to have a good A to B before you have to have a data before you can use it. And that table that you showed me how to build, man, that was getting us down the track. And
it's good for the last 20 feet. I told him, I'm like, just turn down the hit, so that something will get the first 20 feet out and get the car moving. Then when the front tire's back on the ground and we can get the 2 wheel speeds going, we can figure out what kind of spin. What was interesting on that was we had one event where he had to pedal on the big end the whole time, and it was because we had loosened up the speed differences. And I mean, nobody seems to care that we're sharing it, but man, so Ray could tell if we allowed 4 mile per hour slip front to rear, that ended up being kind of our number at the end. We tried 9 at one point in time, and the car skated on him a little bit. It was controlling the speed. It wasn't blowing the tires off, but it was allowing just a little bit too much spin, and the ass end would skate, and he pedaled at one time. We kind of whittled our way down to about, at least tried 2 mile an hour. That was too tight. It was digging in too hard. And then about a 4 mile an hour slip, the car really seemed to like it. Would go out the back door. Occasionally it would tickle the traction control. Probably the biggest place that the differential traction control worked was in the shift. Like early on when it was shifting hard and grabbing, you could see it would dig in real hard and yank out, 8 or 9 degrees of timing, which is a lot on a big block, right? 8 or 9 degrees in a big block is like 18 or 19 on a LS. But anyway, so yeah, we got a kind of an embarrassingly slow pass, but it was a pass. And he's like, hey, that's enough for me to get started with something on the profiler. And by God, you whittled it down every time after that. So I was thoroughly impressed.
Yep. Yeah. As we went on, I set up the first zone because that was the most important, because your table, you told me it didn't work down that low.
It doesn't work that good. No.
Yep.
Yeah.
I needed the Davis online at that point. And then as we was getting more and more data, I was setting up the second and then the third zone. I actually never made it to the fourth zone. I just relied on your table out there. As we get more and more data with the Davis and I get some more profiles generated for different ETs.
Yeah, you can lean on the whole pass. Yep.
yeah, I may wind up turning your table off because the Davis will do a better job once it's in there.
Yep.
And to be honest, actually, I probably don't have to turn your table off because the Davis will catch it before it gets to your table.
Ideally, it should, and then you just use the differential to keep it from blowing the tires off if it gets just stupid. You know what I mean? And that's just to save it from a crash or something stupid like that. What I've seen is it's real helpful when you go over fluids on the track that you don't know is there. Over the years, I've probably got 4 or 5 collected logs where guys went over fluids on the big end of the track and didn't realize that the thing yanked out 800 horsepower to keep it from going ass end around. You know, and I mean, I guess, so the greatest comment ever was Ray comes back in the trailer. He's like, I don't think that traction control is even having to work. And after like his second or third pass, after me and JP had it dialed in pretty good, right, and we knew we were going to get going faster, and I pulled up the data log, and it literally was tickling it all the way down. So it's apparently when it's dialed in, and it was nice to be able to sit and dial it in there in person. Apparently it's doing the right thing. You don't want it to get in the way, but you don't want it to give it too much leeway because that car will absolutely blow the fucking tires off. You know, at the very end of the pass. And the way he had it on probably the third or fourth hit, it was before we were having converter or trans issues or whatever it was. I mean, it was clear we could pretty much pick any point in the track and blow off the tires. It was doing 2.4-ish Gs, I think is what we saw, and then it would level off to about 2.0, 2.2 till about 3.5 seconds into the run, then it would start to kind of nosing over. We tried turning up the power and it nosed over more there at the end. So that's obviously where our drive lane issues were screwing with us, but we get that fixed. This car's going to be pretty thick.
The car went a 89, then it went a 77, then it went a 66, then a 53. Then in our last pass, it went a 56. We had more power in it. It would have run way deeper than that, but the converter or tranny, one or the other or both, were just giving it up.
Do you think there was a high 30 or something possible if everything else was working that night?
I really do. I really do, especially like the 53 pass or the 56. I think the track was there to hold at least a 40, if not a high 30. But we just had mechanical gremlins biting us and just wasn't going to let us get there.
Yeah. I mean, it happens, but otherwise we were pretty happy. I mean, it sounded like Ray and his dad Chuck were pretty happy with how things went. I know I had fun because I didn't have to stress on trying to figure out how to make a car leave. I'll let Jim take the responsibility there. That's kind of taking the lead. But, I went over and I kept an eye on the vitals and stuff like that. All right, is this thing making sure the oil pressure is the same every pass and we're not losing fuel pressure or anything stupid like that? I'd go through the EGTs, make sure that they were all hitting. Dude, the Bischoff motor's a pretty neat intake deal because that it was within 60 degrees on EGTs for the passes that I was checking, the whole spread, without any individual cylinder tuning, which is crazy because that's kind of like if you're doing good, you get under 100 after some adjustment. But so that part was working out good. The secondaries were kicking in like they should. I think everything electrical has sorted out and working good. Car's easy to work on. I like that. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, it was a good time. What? Let's see. Do I have? Oh, I can't post a link in YouTube, but I posted one in the Real Tuners Radio podcast fan page. If you see, there's the outside video that Jim was taking with his phone of that one pass, and it's pretty cool to see how this car leaves. You know, Jim. The other thing that I thought was pretty cool was maybe it was the first time I was paying attention or gave a shit, or maybe it was my ego thinking I don't want to be stupid around this guy. But I really paid attention to Jim, what he was doing, setting up the chassis, and for whatever reason, it's the first time I can look in a data log and say, oh my God, look at that adjustment he made there. When he made a dampening change to shocks, I could literally see it in the travel, the rate of change slow down. In one case, he tightened the rears to get down the track a little bit. And it absolutely, I don't know if you followed up and looked at the suspension data on that last pass, but it absolutely dampened down that shit in the end that was letting the rear tire get off the ground. And we were actually hitting bumps in the track that were letting the tire get a little bit off the ground or lose a little traction. But that fixed that issue. I thought that was cool.
I did check that. And I will say that's one thing about me is I just love being a car guy and I love to share what I get to do.
Yeah.
So there's no secrets with me. There's just no secrets. I mean, a lot of guys, to be honest with you, in years past, I would tell people the truth and they're like, bullshit, you're fucking lying to me. And I'm like, why?
Oh, this is how it works for me. Yeah. Yeah. Well, how you can tell things as an outsider, how you can tell you know what you're doing or that things are good is you have like Jesus Christ, you must have had 600 people down there whose cars you worked on, like half the cars in the lanes, have your sticker on them and stuff like that. All the locals down there, you got them covered. I mean, they know they can come to you and get that car set up and moving, which honestly is the biggest part of any car project. I've always said that any monkey can get your air fuels and your timing right, but it takes some real skills to set the chassis up and get it to leave right. And then I'm not going to go into major detail. I don't know if it's proprietary or secrets. Every chassis tuner explains himself in a different way, and Jim was no surprise there. It was different than what other guys had to say, not contradictory, just a different way of looking at it. It made sense to me, and I could see the changes in the videos and both in the data, and it just kind of made me feel like, all right, I feel like I could at least point people in a better direction on a radial setup when they're trying to get things moving out. But you did a nice job, dude, and that was badass. I was very in admiration of that shit, because to be able to do good electronics and EFI tuning and the chassis stuff, that's kind of rare air. So good work, dude. That was kick ass.
Thank you.
Yeah. What else we missed? I think that about covers. Anybody got any questions? Does anybody know where the hell to look? There we go. I found where the questions are at. Anybody got questions for Ray or JP, Jim, before we let them roll? Because
just typical snake eater banter.
Oh no, skip that. Jim probably doesn't fuck around with snake eater injectors either.
Fuck those things.
That's great. I didn't even brief him for that in front. It's like every tuner that's done real tuning that I'm ever talked to is like, yeah, I've pulled sets of those out. Okay, so nice.
Jim, if you end up with anyone, get me, because I'm like collecting them. I have 2 bad sets. My buddy's bringing me a 3rd bad set. I'm collecting the bad sets for what's the word I'm looking for? Research purposes.
Yeah, R&D.
I want to say something. I appreciate you guys. Y'all definitely made it fun again. To be honest, in I think December, I was trying to convince Dad. I said, I think I'm just going to sell the car.
We were worried about that. We were worried about that.
I really did. Yep.
Yeah. We really wanted you guys to have fun with that deal. And I remember I had even talked to Jim about it. I was like, I just want to make sure that the complexity doesn't fucking get in the way of going out and racing. And it didn't. You definitely had all the right people working on that thing. But
man, it was like a machine. I mean, that was one of the more, I don't even know the word for it. Everybody worked together very, very well.
I thought so too. It felt like some of the better pro stocks people I'd been around. It's like kind of everything just fell into place and everybody had their task to do. And it was kind of neat because as soon as the car would roll back in, Jim would pull the data logs, but he'd put it on a USB stick for me right away. So I could put it, and we could both sit down and go to town on our respective areas. And, like I said, the main pressure was on him getting that thing to leave, and he made some kick-ass calls just the whole night long, dude. Great calls. I'm telling you, we need to go to one of the super nats, either St. Louis or Vegas.
Well, I'll be the first to say the biggest thing holding this car back is me not having no time to go race. You guys,
yeah.
We'd be flying if we had time to race a lot.
Yeah,
no but pressure. If you had time to race, you wouldn't have the money to race, and that's just the fact of life.
Amen, brother.
Yeah, if they're busy, that's a good thing. We like that. I'll be honest, you just tell me and Jason whenever you guys go back racing and fucking around and somewhere in the Midwest here or whatever. Let us know. We'll tag along just because it was so much fun.
We'll be there the 8th. So come
the
on,
8th?
same place. Yep.
Got it.
Y'all come down.
It's on my calendar. Cool. All right. Well, we'll let you guys go. Thanks again, Ray. Appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye. JP, thanks again, buddy. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. All right. Take care.
Yes, sir.
Man, I'm happy to see that car still out there working, dude. That car's been all over the place. That car's been fast.
That green Camaro, his Camaro?
It's been in the 3s.
Yeah. I don't know much about the history of it, and I didn't know, they scaled it and did a little bit of work, but they didn't it's not like they gave it a gigantic chassis workover. And Jim's approach was, I'm just going to just go A to B and see what it does, because he didn't know anything about, he hadn't tuned on the car previously either. So, and I'm like, well, how do you want to do this? Do you go to a chassis guy? He's like, no, let's take it to the track and fuck around a little bit and see what we can get it to do the way it sits. Let's play around with shocks and getting it to launch. Let's get the profiler working and see what it does. And God, that's what it did. And I'll be goddamn, that car was flying.
Do you remember, God, it's got to be 3 years ago now. I sent you a picture of a. It was a big block, but it had the mechanical injection and then the old precision injectors above it. And I was like, "What the hell is this? How do I make this work?" That was that car. That was the first car I ever saw mechanical and EFI side by side staged.
Right. Gotcha. Okay, everybody looks like everybody's on YouTube now, so I can close down the Facebook chat. Okay, cool. Sorry about that, everybody. Hey, if everybody wants to not complain, I put up all the podcasts on audio on the actual podcast sites. They were current as of today. So yeah, I did. I caught up on that. I'll stay up on that. I'm just lazy. I'm starting to be like the power and speed guy, taking a month to put something up. That's not fair. So anyway, took care of that. Hey, so you know what time it is? I need to have like a music intro. It's Fix My Fucked Up Tune time. It's actually, this one wasn't too jacked up, and it's a guy who, I should check my email. Oh shit, he did message me back. Hold on. Superstock, thanks. As my luck would have it, they pulled the plug on Test and Tune tonight. So with your input, my guys need to down the motor so I can get the correct converter. Yeah. Okay. So let's take a look first at his log. Do you guys have copies of that stuff, Mikey?
I do. Yep.
You had it already? So hold on. I'm going to pull up Holly here real quick. I wasn't prepared. Let's see. Open data log.
Hey, whoever the tank is on YouTube, we don't do none of that snowflake stuff where you retract your comment. You say it, leave it up there, bro.
Oh, what did he do?
I don't know. He said something to Kyle Hunt and then retracted it and now posted it again. I'm just busting his balls. But
that's hilarious. Okay. So let's see here. Let me get this set up for easy viewing.
They're asking if this tune is on ball sack base maps.
No, it's not that bad. It wasn't the most horrible thing in the world.
No, the maps don't look horrible.
Well, there's some parts I got problems with, but I'm going to go ahead and
why don't we talk about what the combination is, at least in general terms, and what we're looking at here? So
because that would make it understandable and clear for people who are watching.
Yeah, just
sorry.
Why are you bringing common sense, Bill?
Advanced sharing here. Okay, hold on. I'm working it. Share screen and go. Screen one, go. Okay. So now, Jason, go ahead and I'll have him fix my stuff here. Hold on. So, all right. Let's wait and make sure he's got this thing trimmed out here. Hang on just a second. I have to tell him on our Facebook Messenger. Hold on a second, because he's got it where it's the screen's chopped. There, he's doing it right now. He's got it. Here it comes. Boom. Good work, Shaq. Okay, so now you can see what's going on here. This is a pass. What we've got, this combo, it's an LS-based engine, okay, naturally aspirated. Let's just go ahead and open the guy's tune. Let's take a little poke around. So
it's
open
got
global file.
Speed transmission, because I can tell that part.
Right? Oh, shit. Hold on. It's on V5.
One, but two shifts.
Yes. That's the end of my confidence.
Okay. There we go. So what we got here, I usually go to ignition right away. It's a 58X LS. So it tells you it's an LS combo. Okay. You can tell how it's set up for 1 bar atmosphere. So it has, obviously it's naturally aspirated. What we've got here is an NHRA legal super stocker, okay, that runs an LS engine. And his complaint was when he leaves, the thing just sits there and hangs and bogs and is goofy, and then it finally decides to roll and take off. So I'm looking at his data log that he sent here. Let's get rid of some of this stuff here. Let's get rid of ignition, oil pressure, fuel pressure. I don't care about VE.
I hate to be stupid, but is this like an SSHA car or something?
It's not a super stock altered Hemi. Is it stock eliminator?
Not an HA. I'm talking.
Oh, HA. Sorry. You know more about those classes than me, but I can. Hold on here. What does he say it was? He just says it's a super stock LS. So it's one of the super stock classes. I have no idea what the displacement category is or any of that. But don't really need to know, honestly. An engine's an engine. I can tell you if it's a forklift, I can tell you that something's fucked up here on the launch, right? So you can see him right here. He's on the limiter. Can everybody see what we're doing here? Is everybody following along? First thing I'm looking at is I see, all right, well, we're on the limiter. Okay, and then the car launches. So maybe I will set my 0 point on the Holly. And that'd be easy to do if I could get, here we go. Yes, reload. Okay, so now my 0 seconds is right here. Okay, so literally,
GPS at 99, right?
yep,
Okay.
green is the throttle position sensor. Yep, he's at 100%. He's on the throttle the whole time. He lets off the button. And look what you get right here. You get this weird, I'm hanging at 3,700, 3,800 RPM. Then I start to roll. And now I'm finally taking off at a whopping 2 seconds after he's let off the button. And he says it's embarrassing. He doesn't like it. Obviously, I see some weird RPM ripple there. Then the shift. Maybe that's a pretty big RPM drop.
That's a huge RPM drop.
Yeah.
That was like 2,000
RPM.
RPM. This thing fell below 6,000 on the shift.
Yeah, huge issues there. The other thing I see that I don't like when it's hanging right here, I mean, so right away, all of us said, man, I think the converter's maybe tight. But look right here, these air-fuel ratios right here, this is indicative of misfire to me.
Yes.
And it's bouncing, the richest it is 14s and 15s and 16s here. I mean,
Scott,
so
do me a favor if you want to see it and how I find a misfire. Go to where go a little bit farther right with your line.
Yep.
And zoom in on that area of the map, and you'll see the RPM kind of ripple up on you.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. No, the other way to do that is to do it like this. So hold on a sec. Let me zoom out. You can do from 2,000 to 4,000 and undo zoom. I hate their zoom. Yeah, so you can kind of see the ripples here. I mean, you can see it's having trouble, right? It's struggling this whole time. And I mean, again, the O2s are really indicative that shit's messed up. Now, if I put this back to 0 to 8,000.
So you're saying it doesn't have enough Excel enrichment on the hit? Basically?
Not really, because look at this. Look what happens here. So I'm looking at how it comes off the brake, and it comes off lean. Yes. All right, it doesn't come in with a big burst of fuel. And again, Mike, just interrupt me if you think differently or whatever. But
no, the O2s are telling you there's a problem. Now, is it a fuel problem? Is it a fire problem?
You don't know.
I need to be there. Yeah,
Yep. So what we're going to do is our little favorite move here. Okay, so now I've got the windows side by side. Now I can sit and watch where this thing went. Lo and behold, Mike caught this right away when he looked at it too, but this VE table isn't quite a VE table necessarily. No. The motor was not happy at all until right here. Right here, it finally started taking off. And what's it got? 10% more fuel here than it had here. So my first thinking was, guys, you're too lean on the brake. And it's hard to tell because it's always going to show misfire when you're on a limiter, right? But I always tell how you are on the brake based on how it comes, how quickly it recovers the O2s. You should have within a half a second or even a quarter of a second on a naturally aspirated car, it should be damn near instant. You should see your target air fuel ratio. So my next question was, well, is he not doing closed loop? Was it trying to close loop correct? What's going on? You look at CL comp here. That's the green line on the bottom. Ain't doing shit. So I went over to the closed loop learn, and lo and behold, he's got closed loop turned off.
Yep.
But he's got learn turned on. So I went and looked at the learn table. So it's learning, but it's not closed loop correcting during the pass.
So it's telling you it's wrong, but it's not helping you fix it.
Right. It's fixing it for later, very slowly, trying to. So I zeroed that stuff out. I'm not a big fan of letting that do anything. And I figured right away.
Drag race launch, right? I mean, isn't it, just to clarify what we're saying here, you're trying to launch a super stock car, which has got a lot of tire and relatively low torque at the bottom of the curve here.
Yeah.
And you're trying to make this thing hit and leave, which means it's got to hit the converter. It's got to get up somewhere. It
needs to make torque off the hit.
Yeah, well, it's got to get somewhere where the torque band actually is, and it's not down there at 3,300 or wherever.
Right. However, it may be because of the lack of fuel. That it's not making any torque to get up past that number. I mean, it is misfiring badly right here because of lack of fuel is what I think. Either that or ignition problems. But if it was, they clean themselves up later in the run.
And that's why I think it's lack of fuel.
But not ignition, right?
For those that were listening to what Scott said, why he's not a fan of Learn, and we've talked about this before, but one of the big things with Holly Learn is Holly Learn tends to overshoot. So if it's 10% lean off your target table, it might tell you, the learn table might light up and say, hey, 22%. And if you just bang that transfer to base button a couple times,
Yeah, you
You're
can
gonna
fuck
be
up
like,
a good tune.
Yeah, why am I all the way out here and way in left field now?
Yeah.
Be very careful how closed loop, Holly closed loop is almost scary good. You can almost run the entire car in closed loop. Please don't do that, but you can.
Yeah.
But the learn table is a little. Learn table helps a tuner do his job. It doesn't do the job for you.
Yeah. So anyway, looking at this, what I noticed was, hey man, this thing was around 87% VE and it was struggling. As soon as that fucker hit 95% VE, it lit and took off. So what my first move is going to be, and also this engine's not going to have increasing VE to 8,500 RPM. It's going to have a peak. Typically, these guys are going to be something like this. This will be their, let's make this their 118 or 120. I'm going to turn back on the closed loop. I'm going to make this about a 116. Fill in horizontally. And then I'm going to raise this up a lot, right? I'm going to call this at least 95 for both of those rows. So it's got plenty of fuel when it launches in there. And then I'm going to fill in horizontally here. Okay, and I'll look at this on my graph like I always do about this time. And let's maximize that. Why do I?
It's coming.
Oh, I hear myself talking on my phone. Sorry, hold on.
So this thing is an 8,500 RPM super stock motor.
I guess he was shifting it before then. I don't know. Good question.
The 1 to 2 shift is decently high. The 2-3 was way lower.
So this is what I'm doing, just to what I think it needs for fuel. To be honest with you, the good question is I don't know. And the cool thing is you don't need to know.
You're showing us, and we're at 2,800 RPM and 1,700 RPM.
Well, all he's doing right now is smoothing out the transition between getting onto the brake and.
Yep. Should look something like this.
But I'm just kind of wondering, when it's on the brake, what RPM was that?
About 3,600, I remember.
Yeah, 3,600. Hold on a second here. Pulling it back up.
It might be a little off.
No, on the brake, he was 3,300.
Okay.
So, and we can go look at his.
And the power, I'm just looking at the power band where the shift recovery points when the motor actually started working. And this thing is, what, 5 and change to 8 and change?
I see on his limiter here that I've got 3,400 and 3,350. That's kind of making his launch a little rough. Let's make that not a spark only. Let's make that a high only. Like that right there for him.
My gut built, I want to put converter in and I want to throw gear and I want to do something, but you have to get the tune right because this thing was such a dud.
Yeah. He had closed loop turned off. There's no, exactly. It had to be killing 100 horsepower.
I get that, Mike, but as you know, the only experience I have in this world is mostly NA stuff. Yeah. And if you're trying to get an NA car like this to leave, given all the limitations, because NA, and cubic inch, and it's a super stock, so it's got a big tire. So, this thing ought to be on the brake at 5,500 RPM minimum.
Agreed. No, and I can see getting him there, but the problem is before I can tell him to go start throwing gear parts or anything at it, I got to get the thing sorted out. Yeah. And then he can start throwing parts at it when he knows where it's going to end up. Because a converter guy, nobody can tell you where to put it with this kind of data right here. You know what I mean? And honestly, he wasn't letting it correct itself. So I gave it a fighting chance. Let's go back and turn on the correction here. So I'm back in closed loop learn. Closed loop parameters. Let's turn it on. Let's say I don't want it kicking on a car like this while he's on the limiter, but he's 3,400 RPM. Let's turn it on at 3,600. I don't think I need to give it 100% correction, to be quite honest with you. I'd probably give it something like a 40% correction. I'd probably build a table something like this.
Agreed.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. Whatever. You guys might do a little bit different. It'll catch it. My worry is if it starts misfiring, it just starts pouring in the fuel. And you look stupid like a diesel going down the track. And I'm going to turn this learn stuff off. I want to look at this. This is a drag race car. You should be looking at the AFR every pass, and you should be adjusting it by hand. You don't want it to be correct in 20, 30%. You don't want to blow 10 passes trying to get that lined out. That's my opinion anyway on that. Spark. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much just came from an MSD lock distributor kind of timing map. 24 degrees is probably pretty safe for this combo. My guess is it's going to want more like 28 or even 30 eventually, but he's not there yet. I don't know. I would see what it does where we start getting some incrementals, even if the car's slow, and seeing if we can pick up with playing with timing. But
That'll only show up at the top end of a gear, though, right?
yeah, pretty much.
I think it's going to want more timing at 8,500 RPMs than 4,500 RPMs.
I think that it is. No, I think that it probably would too. Yeah.
Well,
I mean, my guess is if you engine
always
dynoed this. So he sent me back a message saying they're ready to engine dyno it and figure it out and have us tune it. But my guess is, like Perduto says, you're going to end up with something like that if you put this on the engine dyno.
Yeah, I agree.
You think so, guys? Yeah. Something like that.
Yeah, you picked an NA motor, so I actually have something useful to say here. I mean, otherwise,
yes. No, please, you're right. Fire away. And we've been through all this on your NA combos, right? We learned this, we had to learn this.
Chamber that's very similar to an LS, so that's where I'm kind of coming from.
And once again, if we're explaining why we're doing this, when you time a motor, you're going degrees before top dead center, but you're actually shooting for almost an amount of time before top dead center that you want to blow that plug off.
Yeah.
Obviously, piston speed at 8,500 RPM is quite a bit faster than piston speed at 4,500.
Well, the burn rate is roughly the same, so you need to light it a little bit earlier.
The burn finishes at the same
correct
degree after top dead center, and since the piston's moving faster, you just start it sooner because that time in milliseconds takes the same amount. Your piston just covers more angle.
Which one of these days, next time we get the combustion pressure analyzer out and we got it on something, we'll take some good videos of how you can visualize that, because it really helps a lot.
Those in glass, if you can find a good glass cylinder video, are really awesome to kind of visualize that.
I kind of want to just make something on my own. The other thing I don't like is he's got 0 degrees of timing here, or 0 RPM. I mean, I would probably start this at 500 and then probably take this to like 9,500 and then probably fill in the blanks like this.
Other than adjustments for start RPM, I mean, I don't know why you need to be down there. Again, this is a super stock motor. This thing ought to idle at 1,100.
At least. Yep. But I don't like it to pass through a number with 30 degrees of timing after cranking RPM, because like I was talking about, the dipshit YouTube guy put a thing on with advanced table that adds a bunch of timing at idle while the spark timing was turned on. That was also adding a bunch of timing at idle. And as soon as this engine would crank past 400 RPM, it would literally have 53 degrees of timing at like 401 RPM, right? And the thing had a gigantic intake backfire. Yeah, you'll break this ring gear right off. But or worse, bend rods. But anyway, be careful on that. I don't know, a lot of timing for the same reason they were talking about. If you think about it this way, think the difference between 500 and 1,000 RPM. At 1,000 RPM, 20 degrees of timing is the same thing as 40 degrees of timing at 500 RPM. Just think about that. So you want to try to scale it with RPM, or you look for that. Let's see. So we think we got the fuel figured out, or at least it should figure itself out after that. Ignition. Did you look at anything else? Anybody, Mikey or anybody? That
I did. I was looking at it at work while I was playing around, and there was a couple.
I always like to look at battery just to see what's going on. It's on some basic fuel.
Fuel pressure was static. There was no fuel pressure issues. I saw that.
Yep, battery's totally static at 13.2 all the way out the back door.
If you look, the only thing I don't like, Scott, that worries me is, and you got to go back and look at air fuel. Look just before the 2-3 shift. That RPM graph showing misfire again.
No, if it's not a misfire, it's something chunking in the trans or the converter. Something's wrong. I mean, to me, it looks like the engine's being loaded, because if that was misfire, see, that's almost like a suspension or a tire issue also.
Look how lean she goes again.
Yeah, right here. Yeah. No, he's right.
Rolling into the 2-3 shift, right?
Yeah, but leading up to it, look what happened here. Something did go wrong here.
That's
he's right.
What I'm saying.
And once she pressed about that 14.0 number, she starts getting real retarded.
Well, hold on. What was his rev limiter set at?
Oh, they're nowhere near it.
The 8,500. Yeah, they're nowhere near it. So
the 2-3 shift.
Well, I mean, it falls over and starts to flatten out before that. You're having a problem.
Yeah, right here. Yeah. I mean, this is probably your transport delay showing you the O2 is late, right? So that's 5.0 seconds to 5.5. It took about 0.35 seconds to show up. That's probably transport delay. So Mike's probably right. Started misfiring here, but that's a weird misfire, guys. That's a 1 every 10th of a second cycle. That's not a single. I don't know what that is. I wouldn't believe it just dropped a cylinder there because you'd see it more jagged, I think. Let me undo the
going
zoom.
back to the larger map, you can see that the 1-2 shift, where it comes up on the 1-2 shift, there's a little bobble there.
Right here.
As it pulls up.
Yeah, and look at the fuel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then there's something else.
Oh, wait a second. Could we just be too lean?
That's exactly what I think it is. If you look, because it's bouncing that air fuel ratio, and you'll watch both times you see the bobble is right about the time it crests 14.0.
So I already changed his fuel up here.
Well, do we know what it was originally? Because
yes.
I think you guys are right. I think it was running out of fuel both times, and it just kind of blew through it a little bit on the 1-2 shift because the engine is accelerating so fast. But the 2-3, the rate of acceleration is slower. So it has more time to like not be happy, which is why you see the bigger fall in the shift recovery from the 2-3 shift.
Yeah. And he did not have closed loop correction turned on, so it would not correct itself there. So that's probably going to fix the problem, at least get us to where we can build a map. And no, I don't have the original anymore. I saved over top of it. I could actually.
Hang on, I have it on my screen.
You want to share it on yours? Go ahead and share it on yours and see what it'll, because you got a pretty fat, weird thing. But
I don't know
go
which
ahead,
screen it's going to share when I do this. Hang on 1 second.
You get to pick when you hit the share button at the top or at the bottom.
Or you might have to let him share.
I just shared my camera. Hang on. Host disabled, participant screen sharing.
Oh, that's you, Scott, or whoever the host is.
I have to okay that?
Yeah.
Apparently.
I don't
you have to enable, screen sharing for participants and then enable him.
Well, I can voice it to you. What RPM was that at?
Here, I'll just share mine again. I don't see where I have the option to. It says you can share right here. Multiple participants can share simultaneously. Sorry. Okay, we'll share mine. So the RPM was, it looks like each time it started maybe struggling around 6,900, 6,800.
So
the shift point is
it
where?
goes up in fuel at that point. We went from, so at 62.33, we're at 117 VE. At 6,800, we were at 123. And then at 73.67, we were at 124.
I'll tell you what's going on. I can tell you what's going on that 1-2 shift. Take a look at the air fuels where I'm parked right now. It's 10.4, 10.6.
Yep.
Let's look at fuel flow. If the fuel flow keeps going up at that point, 0 to 200. Yeah. Here, I got it. It's too rich, guys. It's a rich misfire, at least on that one.
You always
You're seeing it come up on the top of the other one, too.
Nope, bullshit. Look at the fuel flow. It's pouring the fuel on, and that's where it starts going jagged right here. So hold on. Look at this.
No,
let me put
you're
this on the
low.
second.
You're down where it's pulling good right there.
Hold on. Panel 3. I'm going to put fuel flow on its own panel at the bottom here. So here's my concern is that if you look, air fuel's taking a rich dive right here from 4,400 on. Okay, 4,600, 4,800. Look at your fuel flow there where the VE should be leveling out on this engine. The fuel flow is going ape shit up.
There's a small bobble where you just were, and now when you get up, watch it goes lean again.
It does, but how do you know that that's not starting to become because it's dropping a cylinder? Because look, you're getting this right here. I mean, you're getting the jagged behavior in the RPM.
I doubt it.
But then again, on this one here, then it's but I have a hard time believing that's misfire because there's just 4 RPM dips there, right?
The biggest problem here is just on anything like there's too much up and down. We've got too much. The
O2s are bouncing around. Mm-hmm.
So it's hard to say. Yeah, I would definitely say that first one looks like a rich misfire. Clean that up and see if it goes away. And if it does, then you
could have an exhaust leak in a dead hole. So the one thing I've noticed, this is a pretty rough trace for AFRs for a Holly, right? You guys notice that? That tells me that you may actually have a cylinder that's not firing the entire time. Because, I mean, that trace is rough.
Is there a way to see that?
That's rough for how smooth the VE table is. And I didn't.
It's pretty smooth.
But I didn't see any really crazy fuel corrections going on.
No, That's why I'm saying this jagged line leads me to believe maybe he's got a cylinder missing too.
Because the first thing I went
to do, plug reading.
Yeah.
Yep.
I went and looked at trims and yeah, and if Learn was messing with stuff too bad or anything, but
It was a little goofy, but I see the fuel flow here. I see this rich dive, and all of a sudden, of course, then again, it's 5,100 RPM. Maybe it's just coming up into the cam, and it needs a lot more fuel there. But yeah, I'd go with definitely a fuel adjustment here, which I think letting closed loop correct would take care of that for the most part.
Hey, is it me, or is that battery voltage line getting that little sketchy thing? Because that means that literally the engine RPM is moving around. See, it's dead smooth on the climb, and as it gets to the peak of first gear, all of a sudden it gets wiggly. And
Right
then after the 2-3 shift, it gets wiggly.
Right here, the blue line, you're talking about battery, right?
Oh,
let's do this.
What's the yellow line?
Yellow line is battery. No, battery I thought was purple. Hold on.
I was
nope, you're right. Yellow line was battery. What was the blue line here? Blue line was target AFR.
I just feel like it's not happy, and therefore even though we don't notice it, the RPM is really moving around. This is the kind of thing that glues your damper to the crank.
You do get some battery stuff here, so 12.
Well, and I'm just saying, I think this thing is the engine is not running smoothly at those points.
No,
I'll be honest. Nope. If it's me, okay, I'm at the track, I see this log. The first thing I'm going to do is clean up that fuel map a little bit like Scott did. I'm going to turn that learn bullshit off.
Yep.
And I'm probably going to bring on, I would probably go on 50% closed loop, and I just sent the car again and see where we had to send it. So
see what it tries to correct to and see if it runs. Yeah, that's exactly what I would do.
And then fix it after. Don't just leave it on closed loop.
No, yes. No,
yeah.
Let the car show me, okay, this is what it's doing, and then start to make that move and let it trend make the trend go where it needs to go. Because if you look at the 2-3 shift, the RPM gets really weird after the 2-3 shift too. So whatever misfire was in the 2-3 carried into third gear.
Yeah, not to mention several hundred RPM difference in the shift point, but then the thing is just not working very well.
Well, zooming in on the battery, like Bill talks about, it's kind of got some noisy stuff going on. I wonder if we got some plug wires. I don't know if it's got an alternator. Probably. No, it probably doesn't, because look when he lets off the throttle, how the voltage comes up. But even though the RPM goes down, it's probably just a battery setup, no alternator. That's my guess. But I don't.
The voltage level tells us it has one, but.
Yo, Tom, why are you yelling at us via the chat and not coming on? Just saying, bro.
Yeah, dude.
We see how you are. He's saying to put a fresh set of plugs in it and maybe do a leak down.
Yeah, that's not a bad idea either. Not a bad idea either. I'll work with him. I'll let you guys know what ends up happening, because it sounds like we're going to work with him on it over the weekend.
All I know is that that's on the brake at whatever that was, 3,200 RPM. He's 2,000 RPM low at a minimum.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, honestly, I still think even if we get the air fuels lined out, this thing's got like a 3,700 RPM converter in it. It's not.
No, I'm betting it's got a 6,000 RPM converter in it, but it ain't got the horsepower to get there.
Yeah, more like it. Well, yeah, because the way it shifts, right? Look at the shift recovery. So what do we decide on here? 74.77 down to 54.60, over 2,000 RPM.
There's just no horsepower in the motor at all.
Yeah. And it's struggling.
That's what's making this tough to diagnose. But again, it's
watch the struggle.
Is it the chicken or the egg?
An engine dyno.
It's funny you say that, because he just said he's going to take it to an engine dyno. So
I know. No, you said that earlier, and it's like good, because then he'll have a real baseline idea what mean best timing is and what this thing actually produces and where everything should work in order to make it work. And again, this is a super stock, smaller displacement, big tire car. Everything's going to happen between 2,000 or 6,000 and 8,000 RPM plus. So all this crap, here on this low end is like, what are we doing here? Even that second, third shift recovery point, that's way below where this thing should be operating.
Yeah, it kicked the motor down the 4,000 RPM range. I mean, it just took the wind all the way out of its sails.
Yeah, which it never recovered through the traps, which you can also see.
And I don't understand why the 2-3 shifts so, I'm going to call it early on an NA car.
Probably because it stopped pulling and he just yanked it. I mean, look at what's happening.
Ooh, is it electronically shifted, or did he hand bang it?
Oh, this is a super stock car. I think he has to hand bang it.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I don't know super stock rules. So that's probably what it was. He felt it and thought it was a rev limiter and banged the gear.
Yeah, could be. Something happened. I mean, I hate to say it, but in a certain sense, these cars are like anvils, and in another sense, they're like highly
Delicate flowers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
but you have to know where they operate, and that's why I asked what class it was and some other things, because you can kind of hone in pretty quickly on what this thing is supposed to be doing. And this ain't it. And
No.
I'm not trying to be insulting to the car owner, but
but first things first, man. You got to first figure out. You got to get the thing to run clean. I mean, in a real world situation, luckily it sounds like he can take it out and dyno it. But what I'm going to try and convince him to do before he pulls it out to dyno is let's go through and make sure all the 8 plug wires are plugged in. That kind of basic stuff. That we're not missing something stupid. Because this AFR still indicates to me that's a rough line for a Holly. That tells me there's getting oxygen pumped past the sensor at some point. Maybe it's got a leak. Maybe it's got a header leak. Maybe it's just got a dead hole, which can be hard to hear on a big loud car like, a big loud combo like this.
What your car is supposed to sound like. A dead hole is obvious, but if you don't,
not to everybody. No, it's not. No, it's not. About 20% of the people out there can tell they got a dead hole.
Bill, I will tell you, I
big
can't
exhaust.
tell you
There's no way. Yeah.
How many remotes I do, and people have no idea they have this.
Yeah, but 80% of the people can't tell.
The other thing is that at Watt, it's a little harder to tell because you're not going to pull air into the header out of the flange even.
No,
At Watt. That's just not how it works.
Which is wide open throttle. Maybe. I know. I mean, I've seen collector leaks and header exhaust manifold flange leaks that would do stuff like this occasionally. But because it's not a boosted engine, so we're not looking at back pressure in the exhaust. You still get rising, pulses in the exhaust that are not always positive pressure, right?
The biggest thing you'll see if you've got 2 AFRs, and I don't see 2 AFRs,
we don't.
But if you do, and you've got that thing, it'll show up more when you're driving around the pits. You'll have 1 or 2 points different on that, or even just in the light throttle driving around the pits, you'll see. Assuming this is a full-on race car.
I would say this would be one of those good examples for pulling plugs to verify what your data is saying. This could be one of those. Everything's good. What are the injectors like in this? Do we have injectors that are fine and idle and down low, but aren't flowing as much up top? You got like a partially gummed up injector. I went through this exactly. I was about to comment on Tom's comment about a weak spring. When I was doing the Skyline, I literally thought we had a weak spring because it was fine on the dyno. We ran ethanol through it. The injectors, we had bad injectors and we didn't pick it up on the dyno because it sounded fine. We had a few weird things and it didn't make sense. Everything was fine. And we had 2 injectors that were flowing 50% less than the best 2. And it was literally like the car had 3 different sets of injectors in it. And if you've got 2 injectors, a hole or 2 dropping out, it could look rich, but you could have 4 holes that are rich and 4 holes that are lean or whatever. And it'll look just like this on your AFR trace because you're making up for it in different cylinders so that you basically get an oscillation depending on when your cylinders are firing.
Hey, Scott, in the Holly, is that fuel flow that's rated in pounds per hour? Is that just understanding you input the injector and then you put in the pulse width and that's a calculated thing? Is that what that is?
I don't understand. I don't know if I understand the question, but you mean the fuel table when it's in pounds per hour mode?
Yeah. So it's showing us that purple trace is showing us pounds per hour.
Right.
And so I'm sort of guessing that's got to be a derived number because, we don't.
It's the blue trace at the bottom, by the way, is the pounds per hour. Yes. And pounds per hour is arbitrary to RPM, right? So the same.
It's calculated from pulse width and,
you start off with pounds per hour in a table in Holly. That's how this one started off, with physical programmed pounds per hour, which is just frankly the wrong way to do it. I don't know another way to say it. It's
you understand I'm not used to that. So
no, I get it. None of us really are. If pounds per hour was because Holly worked with Monty Smith to start off with, and he's a nitrous guy, not an EFI guy. So he wants to see everything in pounds per hour. So that's what they got. Fortunately, the people that make the system are like, hey, you should leave VE mode in here for people who have a little more tuning experience or whatever. And so here we are. this isn't the world's worst VE table for this engine. It's not going to be in ball sack base maps because it's a super stock or stock eliminator or whatever the hell it is. So it's going to be a pretty max effort deal. But
yeah, not knowing what Camus is, normally I'd expect a little. I don't know these engines as well. Normally I expect a little more hump in there before it falls off up top. But
yeah. But then again, like this thing should wind up to 9,500 RPM.
That's true.
And not start nosing over.
It through the hump yet.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what's going on there, but I'll talk to this guy.
And stock eliminators share the same issue in that they have to have what people will loosely refer to as kind of square cam lobes,
right?
Because they're theoretically derived from what the original camshaft specs were for whatever the engine size is. So, this is an LS that's probably been retrofit into a '69 Camaro or something. So now you're kind of making shit up. But the point is they're supposed to be derived from that. So in order to get the engines to make power, you have to fill in the area under the curve, which means your flank rate goes up. And so your nominal duration numbers don't look all that different. But if you were to look at the acceleration rate on the lobe, you would see this big kind of quote square lobe because they're trying to get the valve off the seat in a hurry based on the fact that duration is limited and overall lift is limited. So what are you going to do to get area under the curve? You're going to fill in the flanks, if that makes sense. Never mind.
I get it.
Yeah. In any camshaft limited class, if you
I was just reading. Go ahead.
Yeah. Duration and lift, then the only way you can get more area into the curve is to take something pointy and make it look like this, right? So
right. No, I think that pretty much covers it. The next thing I would do is have him make some passes. Maybe next week we follow up on how this played out and where we ended up and what we ended up finding. I'm totally cool with doing that. So what do you think? See what everybody else thinks. Appreciate everybody else that submitted save that. Everybody that submitted files. I wish we could look at all of them, but this one was a interesting quandary. It was kind of a unique one that came across our desk, and we're going to help him figure it out. So we'll let you know what comes up. What else you guys want to talk about while we're here?
No one's yelled at me for rage typing yet today.
Because you got a new Quag keyboard.
I had a question the other day. We were talking about you made that one, or we did the podcast on how to pick your tuner, the question of how to pick your tuner.
Yeah.
What about the opposite? Flip that script. I was in a situation today, and it came to my attention that sometimes tuners
you had to fire a customer. Hell yeah.
I'd have to fire one. I didn't hire him. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there are quite a few people listening right now that are tuners or tune for a living or stuff on those lines. And how do you pick a customer? I guess
we should have kept JP on. We should have kept him on.
You know what? Yeah.
He had a killer good discussion with me about that exact same topic and the kind of different approaches we had taken in our careers. We've both been doing it almost the same amount of time. And he opened up a shop, got a dyno, and it got him a lot of local business. Man, you go to that track, Centerville, which is a badass little track it's set back in the trees and the hills in Arkansas, and a little flat spot in the bottom of the valley. It's fucking gorgeous. It's fast. They know how to prep. Dude, there was a shit ton of fast cars there too. I mean, there was a bunch of cars running 40s and 50s that night, and guys that had been in the 20s and 30s. Anyway, we were, it seemed like he tuned half the cars that were there in attendance, whether they were index cars or whatever. And he knew all those guys, and he had that broad customer base. And I thought that was interesting because he told me he's had to get selective sometimes, but sometimes he doesn't have a choice of what comes through the door. He just got to make it work, So he was dealing with a broad range of, guys bring him junk equipment, guys bring him good stuff. He has no idea what he's going to see, what comes through the door. And he talked about he got more selective over the years. I thought that was interesting.
A lot of the best thing we ever saw is when we raised our rates. Half the guys that watched us probably shit if they knew what we charge for tuning.
Oh yeah, Shane Tecklenburg told me and Brad that once. We talked to him. He said, I put $250 an hour on my website just to make the 80% of the tire kickers go away. Like, okay, makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, for anytime anybody calls and says, "Hey, this is a full from scratch calibration," you're not leaving our shop for less than $1,200 to $1,400.
Yeah. That makes sense.
One, we pay Boston suburban, greater Boston area rent. So
but you're also tuning cars that don't just go idle and wide open and on the brake, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are doing load tuning and stuff.
this-
That's a 3-dimensional version of some 2-dimensional shit that we do.
especially when we start getting anything with variable cams and stuff like
Oh,
that. It just
fuck
starts
that.
adding on. Yeah,
You know how we get into variable cams?
you lock
out.
Man, I remember we talking about some guys, like literally they bring in, actually I sent you guys that picture, that Miata cam that looks like it's been, and Bill, I think you're dead on that. I think that thing's over shimmed and it's wearing the cam down. They've got adjustable cam gears on it, and they kind of threw them in there, but just like, oh, can you guys start, can you guys just adjust those real quick? I was like, dude, that's the better part of a day to sit there and do it right. And that's why I was joking. I was like, man, like I don't do that anymore. I've got VVT cars. I type in the computer and just do a bunch of dyno pulls and sit in the car the whole time.
It's an interesting way to look at it, but I can see those being $1,200-$1,400 all day.
Easily.
Yeah.
So, because you're going to spend 2 days on that. You're going to work on cold start and stuff like that. So that's at least 2 days.
Typically, when we do a tune on something from scratch, especially standalone or something like that, it spends. Typically, I say it's a day just because I can never sit on the dyno without someone in the shop needing something. It's a good 3 to 4 hours on the dyno back and forth between load stuff, do your steady state. Basically get on a load, just rough the map in, then do steady state, get through some stuff, do wide open throttle, get all that good, then go back and clean it all up and make sure your steady state's good. And then you're doing steady state ignition on top of all of this, and then going back and cleaning up your fuel. If it's a boosted car, then we've got to turn up power and do all of that. Then we'll take the car off, verify drivability. Typically, I'll drive the car home, put it in my garage overnight, which is great this time of year when it still gets down to 40 degrees overnight. Verify cold start and make sure it'll drive back to the shop the next day before we even call the customer and tell them their tune's done.
That's cool.
But that alone helps weed out some of those guys. But we still get some guys that, there's some tunes where, I don't know. Like sometimes there's just a vibe you get from some guys. One big red flag is that they show up and without giving any pretense for why, they bitch about the previous tuner.
Yeah, that was one of my first ones is.
But I mean, we're going to talk shit about the previous tuner with them. Who's going to lie here? Yeah, that guy sucks.
It depends. Like there's been some, it depends. If they come in and like, there was one guy that came and was like, I don't want to talk shit. We're like, all right, cool. And I'm looking at the map. I'm like, hey, did this guy tune this car? And he's like, yeah.
Different story.
That
Different
bad?
story.
I was like, yeah. I was like, he's done some stuff, but this looks like some stuff I've seen him do where he basically did a rough map in the wide open throttle and left the rest.
I can tell you guys that I don't care what business we're talking about, anything where it's essentially dependent on the intellectual property, if you will, or the intelligence of what you're providing. And that's lawyers, accountants, tuners, you name it. You have 3 problem customers: ones that don't pay, number one. Number 2, ones that have unrealistic expectations. And number 3, the ones that won't listen. You give them good advice and you tell them this is what you need to do and this is how you need to do it and this is what we're going to do, and yeah, and then they go back and, well, my buddy said we should do this, and they turn it all on its head.
Yep.
And they're all going to be problems. And I'm telling you, this happens every day with people who I give legal advice to. They do exactly the same. It's exactly the same thing when they come in. Oh, my other lawyer was an idiot. And it's like, okay,
that's a good indicator that there's,
yeah.
Of course, I did that because my other lawyer was an idiot at one point. But
it's one thing to say, hey, look, I'm not happy with the car, blah, 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 blah. I want to just have somebody else. There's a different way. Like some guys have bad experiences with the tuner or whatever. And it happens. It's how they approach it is a big one. I think that's the unrealistic expectations.
The last one is the people
I see
that lie to you. And there was a phrase in another industry I was involved in once called buyer liar.
Buyers are liars, baby. I'm in sales.
Yeah. Mike. And the bottom line is you get people that, just tell you all kinds of crap, and you end up having to sort through that to figure out, do I have a chance to be successful here? Because they're just blowing shit up my skirt. So
yeah. My
and
favorites.
all of those people are, for those of you listening who are consumers, will get you fired if you're working with somebody who's a competent business.
No, wait, my favorite call is the the dude that probably had a Corvette last at Cars and Coffee, and he's like, I'm building a such and such a car. It's going to be a 383 board stroker, and it's almost the camel hump head 3/4 race cam guy, but he's like, I hear you're an EFI tuner. Do you think you can handle the power? I've had a guy tell me that once before, and it was like a 440 horse small block Ford.
When a guy walks in, what's the biggest horsepower car you've ever tuned? Do you know how to do this big? I was like, it's an engine, man. It's an air pump.
Yeah, exactly. I'm like, all right, see ya. It's cool.
The low horsepower ones are sometimes the more annoying and difficult ones.
I told him, I was like, I don't think I can handle the power. He didn't know what to say. I'm like, nope, I don't think I can handle the power. I had to let that guy go. It was pretty funny. He was building an Eleanor clone.
The biggest one is when you've already brought something on that looked good and you get into the project and need to tell them just go. The actual the not hiring is it's less awkward. You need to know how not to hire, but when you made that mistake or you got the wool pulled over your eyes and the car shows up and it's all great and it looks great, and then you open it up and you figure out it's got, it doesn't have the injectors they said or whatever. And
we had a couple of those.
If you tell them to come pick up the car and
we had this happen here the other day for a second time. There's a popular mod motor shop guy who's kind of let me fix my camera. This guy is kind of a loudmouth. I mean, he posts a lot on the forums, and he's always peddling, SN95 Mustangs or 03 Cobras. He's always got shop built, this and that, whatever. We've had 2 cars in a row where there's some sketchy stuff. The owner reports to me, well, I paid for this to be tuned. And this last one was interesting because a guy who's sort of a friend of mine that they don't think I'm friends with. It's the Sergio tuning guy, right? You've seen me and him go back and forth a little bit on the mod motor pages, but I'm actually okay friends with Sergio on the side. And the guy's like, yeah, Sergio tuned this, and he billed the customer like, I don't know, $800 or whatever he billed for this tune. And the customer's like, man, the car doesn't really run at all off the trailer. I figured I'd just call you and have you take a look at it. And of course, it's got it was set up for a mod motor, but it must have had a 4L80 swap and a General Motors IAC. It had all the wrong map sensor configured, all the wrong pressure sensors were configured wrong. It was obviously someone just slapped some other tune in there, and they were like, yeah, Sergio tuned it. So I called Sergio. I messaged him, and I showed him this stuff. And he's like, fuck, dude, that's nothing of mine. I'm like, I didn't think so, because I've seen some of your stuff. You've seen some of my stuff, and this is just somebody dropped a file on here. They're not being honest. And then what that guy did,
the car they stole the file from.
Yeah, exactly. But then that guy selling the car, oh, well, he tried to throw Sergio under the bus. I'm like, hey, this same guy did the same shit to me 6 months ago with another customer. Both customers now, one of them I've already written a statement for his lawyer, and then another one says he's probably getting a lawyer because they found out there's a bunch of hard parts that they were sold that are not on the car as well. Allegedly, that's what they're saying. But anyway, so yeah, I thought that was interesting. You run into that stuff out there a lot. You got to be careful. And then other people were sending me screenshots of this guy. Oh, it's just Scott Clark couldn't figure out how to get it running. I'm like, yeah, I don't think that's the problem. But interesting way sometimes you got to fire another shop too. It happens. So what else do you want to talk about?
Someone just asked, is there a reason some people run individual cylinder EGT for tuning only and then remove them after the tune is set instead of always having them installed?
I leave them installed because they're nice debugging. Like this car right here, I'd love to have EGT data so I could see if it had a dead hole.
Or is this a situation where maybe
I was supposed to answer this guy earlier today. I totally forgot. This is the guy I'm building a harness for, actually. Yeah, I think you guys, they're great for debugging. The thing for me on EGT always is in this car, he's not making enough power where I'm like, oh my God, we need EGTs. That said, if they're on there, they're great. They're a great tool. I will throw more data at a car. This is an M-Tron car. So we've got a lot of data. We've got a lot of options. So there's a lot we can do with EGT. And leaving them on there after is like you guys said, it's a great debugging tool. If a hole goes down, if you throw a rocker or whatever SR stuff does SR stuff. If they're on there, I don't see any reason to take them off. And in that car, I would run an AEM EGT box via CAN to the M-Tron.
Yeah.
Is there any downside to leaving EGTs just sitting there in the exhaust? I mean, do they burn up? Do they do anything else that might?
Not if they're installed right.
Okay, that's what I'm getting at. It doesn't seem like there'd be a downside.
They can be a little bit of a mess to wire in a right engine bay. Some guys struggle to get them wired cleanly, especially if you're trying to use pre-made EGT probes with preset lengths. On this car, there's only 4 inches difference between each cylinder, so I don't think it should be too bad. But yeah, it's really just a routing thing. The biggest thing is just getting them installed right in the first place, getting your bungs all in the right area, getting your sensors the right depth and all of that. That's typically where I see the mistake made, is guys just fire bungs in, and you've got a 100-degree difference between cylinders because your sensors, half inch different.
EGT is not a sensor in the same way that, I don't know, a map sensor is, or an inlet air temp sensor is, or those things. Is that correct, or am I off?
Yeah, so it's a dissimilar metal thermocouple, basically. That's a real shit way of explaining it, but yeah, I mean, to burn up an EGT, it's not like an O2 where you've got a little wafer in there that can break or something like that. It's literally just 2 pieces of metal. They're usually encapsulated in some way. In order to burn one, if you're going to burn an EGT probe, you're probably burning other engine components.
Like spark plugs.
Yeah.
Oops, I talked muted. Everybody say something. I was just going to say, I'll just take them out and see if there's the ground strap's still there. So, what else before we wrap it up? That was fun. We'll do another tune review next week. I think we should do one of those every week, a Fix My Tune thing. Jerry Bonnefeld sent me one. I think we'll queue him up for the next week if we can, because and I don't.
If anyone's got any different ECUs they want to take a look at, do
you guys want to take a look at a Haltech? Does somebody want to submit a Haltech or even an M-Tron? I'd like to let Barnhill run with something, so you guys could kind of see his methodology. He came from a legit OEM background. Guy has a unique approach, and he's going to make us all look stupid eventually.
Something that's not drag race would be fun.
What do you mean eventually?
Right, I know. He's a smart dude, man. The way he handled that AEM dash on Dan Parker's car was super impressive. So I was like, I don't want to work with this guy more. So if somebody out there's got a Haltech tune or because James Short can get on the Haltech too, and we can set him down.
Haltech,
I don't know.
M-Tron, Link, any of those.
Yeah.
Haltech would be fun. Haltech or M-Tron would be fun.
If not, we'll put a post up, Brian. We could put a post up and get somebody from one of those groups as a volunteer. I thought that might be kind of neat too. One week take a mod motor, one week take an LS from Turbo LS or Turbo Bullet sometime, or work on somebody's BAE Hemi. I get a lot of those. I get a lot of fuel tech guys that have me do like the setup and then the initial startup and get it to start and run. I have that reputation for, hey, get Clark's base A to B on there, and then they'll take it to somebody like Mike or JP or somebody, or Perduto here. And
that's my favorite, man. Let me tell you, because if it comes off the dyno, Scott, my job's easy.
We have this way of working with you guys. You took Will Tetro's car.
Yep.
We got the base tune on the dyno. He's like, I had to change a couple little things to make it nice at the track. Fucker went A to B, and then you guys just started whittling away, and I'm fine with that. I enjoy the shit out of that. Ray's car, Ray Parsons' car that was just on here tonight. I enjoyed helping Brad just configure that thing in the shop and getting all that fucking I/O working and talking, and then I was burnt out, and he's like, how about we have JP help us out? He's right down there. And I'm like, shit, yeah, let's meet that guy. I want to check him out because he's got a lot of customers, and, turned out he was just perfect. Literally where my knowledge started getting skinny, that guy was just able to pick up the ball and run with it. And he made some killer calls. God, I love that. It's so much fun watching guys that know how to do that round to round, making the calls. I'm not, I'll take some stabs at it, and I'm real good on the power management, but getting the car to leave like that, and he's doing things like, well, hey, instead of changing the launch RPM, let's see what the shock adjustment does here. Oh, it took off, 0.06 on the 60, and it did it twice in a row, which was cool because, I'm an ABA guy, or at least an AABB kind of test. I want to see some validation. But when he didn't touch something, it would print the same number on the ticket for that incremental.
And you don't get to do that at the track when you're racing. That's always the problem.
Yeah. But it's nice to have multiple guys there to be able to watch that stuff, because it's like, look, I'll take care of the EGTs. I'll take care of the traction control after zone 1 or 2 of your profiler, right? Like we were turning, kind of phasing his out while we were phasing mine in. We had the differential traction control working so good by the third pass that we never had to mess with it the rest of the night, and it would tickle it when it needed to.
Well, that's the other thing you can do so well is you get MBT nailed, you get the fuel curve nailed, you get, a lot of those, injector, balancing things
Phasing,
nailed. And
yeah.
so all of that stuff is really right there. None of that's really going to change, but once you know that that's right, then you get to focus on chassis tuning, and you get to focus on launch tuning, and you get to focus on those other things that are, like you say, the first 60 feet. Do
you feel it should be on the engine dyno that you find all that out, Bill, or chassis dyno? I mean, we did all that on the engine dyno for you, really. We did both.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I think you can get a great deal done on the engine dyno if everything permits, budget, time, everything permits. You can get a great deal of stuff done on the engine dyno. And then when you put it in the car, you have to adjust for the fact that shit changes when it goes into the car.
Mm-hmm. And it does.
The bottom line is the combustion chamber didn't change, and a whole bunch of other things did not change. And so if you've got that shit right, and you know what that looked like, and you can look at logs on a dyno pull and what it did, and if something changed when it got into the car, it's like, okay, well,
it should stick out. Yeah.
It'll stick out. And that's why I was looking at your super stock guy, and I said, well, there's all this stuff, because I've seen that. So that makes that easier when you're tuning a new combination. The tough part is always you rebuild the combination, you stab it in the car, you have no idea where you are, and you're going to go to the track and try and make 3 hits and then go into rounds. And that's where it gets tough, and you're dealing with 11 things at once, and what do you do? And that's where the Perdutos of the world and stuff are so awesome, because they can move, and the JPs, and it's no knock on you, because you can do stuff in the engine that I don't know anybody else can do. And this is what Brian does, I think, with drift cars and road race cars, because there's a balance to be struck between all of that. So
there is. It was definitely nice to be able to team up and take on stuff that I knew I was good at, and that I'm like, hey, you want to handle the stuff that I suck at? Yeah, take it, run with it. Just worry about that. But it was funny.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, I was just gonna say, one of the cool things that just kind of happened with these guys, I've worked with I've toured around with NHRA with pro stock guys, and I worked with Proline for a couple years, and we were testing fuel tech. But I'd had about the most fun I've had. The Larry Larson stuff was a lot of fun at Drag Week because it was laid back and fun. He didn't really care too bad. We weren't freaking out. And then this Ray Parsons gig was, I was like, man, I haven't had this much fun since like 2015 or 2014 at the track, because just everybody was clicking and everybody had their responsibilities, and just the results were cool. It's fun to team up sometimes. So it's fun shit to do.
Professionals. The hard part is when you're working with some schmo like me, that I'm driving the car, I built the car,
I'm pretty sure there's a cylinder not firing. No, it can't be. No,
well,
it's
but remember that the guy who also has driven the car and built the car and run the car also has a fairly good idea when it sounds like, when it's right and when it's not. So there's a balance to be struck. But that's, again, and maybe not everybody does that, but that's why it's fun to do this and listen to all you guys and get the expertise and know what it takes to go fast, or what it takes to adapt to a changing track situation, which everybody's been there. It's just the people that do it well are the ones who end up on the podium.
Yeah, clearly. We were almost there. If it wouldn't have been for the transmission stuff, I think, and it would have been there.
I broke 2 transmissions this week. I don't hear anything more about transmissions. I'm so
transmissions suck. I hate looking at a data log where it's supposed to shift, and I'm just like, ooh.
Yeah.
It's just the same thing that happens when like that big chunk of ice goes through the blender finally.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So it felt to me, I could just envision or hear the sound of ice going into a chopper. You know what I mean? It's like we just sent 3,000 plus horsepower through something, and all it did was turn into heat and noise. It didn't go any
and lack
faster.
of forward motion.
Exactly. It was nosing over at that last pass. We're like, we're done. But we ended up getting beat by 3/100ths at that what took us out in the semis.
Joe Gomez asked, converting an L83, which is to port injection, would a Terminator X work, or would you upgrade to an HP or Dominator? The Terminator, if you're just running the motor, put a Terminator on it.
Yeah, the Terminator will work just fine. Terminator and a dash.
Do you just want to run it, or do you want a bunch of extra features?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And even that number of extra features in HP really ain't a lot for a Terminator anymore.
No,
Yeah, well, especially with some of the expansion stuff they've got.
If I was racing it, I'd go for an HP so I had internal logging. That would be about
Agreed.
the only thing. That'd be about it.
Yeah. Yeah,
What
logging
else?
is with something that's really overlooked, and that's one area where.
Oh, hey, look at Justin Carpenter's question. Has anyone ever dealt with a Link ECU on an LS?
Yeah, Brian can answer.
I was responding to him.
Oh, got it.
I've done a bunch of Link. I've done a bunch of LS. I honestly haven't done a ton of them together, mainly because when someone comes to me, I like Link. It does some stuff good. They're quirky, and I prefer a Haltech personally over them. But it really depends on the setup. We could go through some stuff on that at one point if someone wants to see.
We could do a live remote.
Yeah, I don't like flex fuel as much on Link. It doesn't it does some blending, but then it does some funky stuff. Like I can't blend boost tables, and I have to do a hard switch, so I can't say, "Oh, run these boosts." So it's harder to stack tables and just really get into some of the more advanced blending stuff in Link. And their math channels are a little funky, but their logging is really nice. It's all one package. Automatic overlay, stuff like that. You can jump back and forth. A bunch of built-in logging. It does automatic fuel pressure compensation. You just click a button. It's a basic one. I prefer to do it the way James and I do it in Haltech. But to do it in Haltech, you have to set it up. There's no checkbox for it. It's kind of a mix. It's easier to use. It's a little bit better price point. Some guys prefer the software. It's just different. I find if you start trying to get really advanced, you can run into stuff where if you're trying to do something they didn't define, you have to jump through hoops. It doesn't give you as many generic outputs and inputs that you can just make a generic table on, and you can max out the tables. There's a max limit to the tables that on Nick, who worked for Mtron, developed a BMW S52. It's a E36 M3 package, and it literally maxed out the ECU with the number of tables you're allowed to run. So there are some limits to it, but if you're trying to just run an engine and you want something with some features, some good boost control and stuff like that, it'll absolutely do it, no problem.
And it's pretty good money pretty cheap, right? For pretty budget oriented.
Yeah, so they're good. They're a good budget ECU without being cheap as far as features. So they've got good features. They're not Speeduino money, but the software works. It's got support. You're going to get a lot of features that you don't get in a cheap ECU, and you're going to come out a few bucks below a Haltech or an Mtron or something like that.
Hey, that's a good segue from Speeduino. Some guys were asking about the Bonneville Turbinator update. We are scheduled to be on the dyno Monday next week, which reminds me, if you're looking for remotes, Monday through Thursday next week. So far, I'm scheduled to be on the dyno. I'll let you guys know in the podcast fan page if that changes. But we're supposed to be up there Monday morning. So me and Jason are going to drive up Sunday night. Got a little bit of work to do on the computer here yet. Got to change out some relays for some different relays we're going to use. And then we got to create a 0 to 5 volt output to show RPM for the dyno. So we can feed the dyno an RPM signal. That's about it, though. Otherwise, I think what we're going to do is wrap it up for the night. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. I'm gonna let Jason know it's time to go ahead and hit the music. So let's see what else. I think that about covered it. Thanks for tuning in. I'd like to thank Jim Parkinson and Ray Parsons for joining in tonight. Talk about the fun we had this last weekend. Keep an eye on that car. That thing at the right events, that thing might crack a 3 something. Curious to see how far Jim can make that thing go when they start really leaning on it. Everything else I think is good. Looks like we're playing some music. So everybody have a good night. Peace out. Take care. And hopefully we'll see you guys next week, unless we're stuck on the dyno. If not, we'll see you in 2 weeks. Everybody take care. Have fun. Be safe. Love you all. Goodbye.